You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 55. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from Educalme. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. If you are brand new to the show, we invite you to subscribe so that you can get our episodes every week when they come out on Monday to help you start your week feeling more calm, balanced, and joyful. And if you are always coming back to the show, welcome back. We are so happy to have you here. All right, this week's episode is an awesome one. It is a gem. Josiane is interviewing Jen Kreitz. She is a resource teacher at a K-4 school in Winnipeg. Over the course of her career, Jen has taught kindergarten to grade 6 in the classroom. She's taught basic French and is a trained reading recovery teacher. Jen recently completed a Master's of Education with a focus in special education. Her coursework began with discovering how to most effectively support struggling readers, but ultimately evolved into researching the effectiveness of mindfulness as a strategy to promote learning, positive mental health, and self-regulation. Jen now infuses mindfulness into her daily professional routines and personal life. This episode is so great. Jen gives so much awesome insight that she gained from studying mindfulness and how it can support learners throughout her master's program, and lots of great ideas of how to bring mindfulness into the classroom and some new ideas that have never been shared on the podcast here before. Jen is a Educalme Classroom ambassador, so she uses Educalme Classroom with her students. Now, I just want to remind you guys that our last chance to come to our Educalme Classroom Professional Development Workshop is this April 25th. So if you'd like to enroll, sign up for that. You get training on how to start a mindfulness practice in your classroom from A to Z. So exactly what to do in that first practice, what to say to your students, how to set it up in the classroom. And then, of course, you get a 1-year subscription to Educalme Classroom. So you have the curriculum and the guided mindfulness practices to be able to practice this so easily every single day in your classroom. So if you are feeling ready to start a mindfulness practice in your classroom, join us on April 25th in Winnipeg. You can enroll by going to educalme.com/Educalme Classroom PD. Educalme is spelled EDUCALME. So again, that's educalme.com/Educalme Classroom PD, as in professional development. All right, you guys are in for a treat. Enjoy this episode.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Jen Kreitz. I'm a resource teacher in Winnipeg. It's my second year as resource, so I'm still learning the ropes. Before that, I was in the classroom, so I've taught everything from kindergarten to grade 6. Did a little bit of basic French. I've taught reading recovery for 5 years, but most of my time was in grade 1 and grade 2.
And what made you want to make that switch to resources? Was it just like a natural path in your career, or was it something that you really wanted to do?
Well, I think it was sort of the natural path my career took. I've always been kind of interested in working with those harder to teach kids. And so with having, the focus of my job now being on those kids, I really get to spend my time either one-on-one or a small group. And, sometimes all kids need is a little time away from the classroom. So I can provide them with a little bit of time and attention, and then return them back so they can carry on with their day.
That's great. And so what does a just regular day in your, just day-to-day teaching look like for you?
Well, I run a few reading groups, so kind of a guided reading groups with all different grades, different levels. Sometimes it's, it could be 4 or 5 kids. It could be 1 or 2 kids in those groups, depending on their needs. I work with EAs and teachers on developing plans for specific students. And, I get called to put out fires here and there too. So that's always the fun part of the day. I have my day planned out and it doesn't always go the way it's planned, but that's okay because, every day is different and that's what makes it fun and exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty typical in resource, right? That you end up kind of playing that role of putting out fires.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you're an Educalme ambassador.
I am, yes. Yeah.
But also, I feel like you kind of became an ambassador we met you last spring because you did a master's. And it was in a unexpected kind of topic, right?
Right.
Can you tell me about it?
Sure. So I started my master's program 4 years ago, and the focus of my study was really on how to best teach struggling readers. With a reading recovery background, that was really my focus, was on literacy. And through the work I did in the research, I kind of sifted through. I came up with ways that work for most kids, but it's really the ones that don't respond to the regular programs. So what was getting in the way for those kids? Like, why weren't they learning and progressing? And one thing I found was that often those kids are the ones with social emotional issues or challenges with their own mental health. And so as I was learning and doing more research, I found mindfulness came up as a strategy and a tool to use with students who are really struggling. And through that, I really learned that biologically and neurologically, their brains shut down. Kids who are under stress, prolonged stress and trauma, their amygdala is activated all the time. So they have like that fight, flight, or freeze happening for a lot of their life. And when that is going on, then their brains really can't take in any new information. So, so we have these kids that are coming to us with those difficulties. What can we do for them to help them? And mindfulness was definitely one of the strategies that came up over and over again in different papers and in different books that I read.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. And it's easy. It's one of the easiest things that we can do as teachers. If we develop that mindset of kind of reframing our thinking to, what, this kid really can't hear me right now because he's worried about where his next lunch is coming from, or because something happened, mom and dad had a fight before he came to school. So if we kind of think about it from the child's perspective and say, okay, well, what can I do to help? And, maybe he just needs a few minutes to breathe. Maybe he needs to go for a walk. Maybe he just needs to look out the window for a few minutes to kind of get his brain back into a school setting. And then we can kind of introduce those new lessons and new learning.
Yeah, that's something that we always talk about, the fact that you can't learn until your brain is ready to learn. And that's kids and adults and everyone.
Right. Exactly.
So often as teachers, we're so quick to jump the gun, right? And just start teaching a lesson first thing in the morning, but we really haven't given our students that chance.
Right.
To be in that space. Yeah.
So often we see that they come through the door and they're already stressed. Maybe it was breakfast. They didn't like what mom and dad prepared for breakfast, or maybe they didn't even have breakfast. And it's like, okay, well, we're doing this. Don't forget you have piano, and don't forget your gym clothes and all this kind of thing. So their brains are already spinning and they just walk through the door of our classrooms. So yeah, just giving the kids a little bit of time just to settle in and make those connections with them. And that's really important teaching time, or a time that can be given back to teaching. And it doesn't have to take long, just a few minutes to connect with them in the morning.
So in your master's, you talked a little bit about how so these kids who are struggling with reading are stuck in their amygdala, the fight and flight and freeze, right?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, Kaylee's the expert at this stuff.
No, you're doing well. Yeah.
And so what did you learn in this research? Like, what were the takeaways about, you said mindfulness came up over and over and over again. So why mindfulness?
That's a good question. I think it's something that has sort of hit the forefront of, education, but also not pop culture, but like our society. Like this past summer, I saw a Time magazine dedicated to mindfulness. So I think it's becoming more as a common, element of what people are doing. It's something that people have actually been doing for ages. If you go back to ancient times, people were meditating way long ago. And I mean, we have to be careful with our language at schools, because for some people, meditation has a very religious connotation.
Yeah.
But mindfulness isn't about religion. It's just about being present and noticing how you're feeling in the moment, and not judging your emotions. Just, yep, this is how I'm feeling, and then acknowledging it and hopefully letting it go. So I think because it's been around for so long, and more and more people are discovering it, and it's just becoming more accepted in greater society, and also, within the education system.
Did you read any or like learn about any researches that were done specifically with mindfulness with kids? It's interesting because it's really an emerging field. So there really isn't a lot of research that has to deal with specifically younger children and mindfulness. There was this one research project that was done in Ontario, and it was a teacher, and she also had yoga teacher training, and so she incorporated that into her classroom, and she had charted the progress and like the behavior and the academic progress of her students throughout the year, and she found that a lot of her students did respond quite well to mindfulness. And in terms of, seeing a reduction in, negative behaviors, increased focus, increased compassion, increased creativity. So it's still something that scientists are working on. There's quite a bit more research in mindfulness with adults, but the scientists and I guess educators are really just beginning to look at the effects with children. Yeah, we were actually, Kaylee was doing some research earlier this month on mindfulness with kids, and she actually was saying to me she noticed that more and more is coming up with kids. Like even from a year ago to now, she's impressed at like how far we've come even in a year. And it's all very positive things.
It is. Yeah. So far, anything I've read has been really positive.
Yeah. So how are you using what you learned in your master's in your school day?
Well, because I'm a resource teacher, I don't have my own classroom, but I do have a group of grade 3 students that I'm working with. So every day, right after lunch, I go into one of our grade 3 rooms and we do Educalme together. And the classroom teacher has said that she really looks forward to that part of the day because it's a calming time for her as well. And she's kind of learning some of the tips and the strategies. But she finds that it really helps settle the kids and gets them ready for the afternoon. After coming in from recess, they're kind of, loud, and they're used to running around outside and making lots of noise. So this is just one way of getting them in and settled. When I was a classroom teacher 2 years ago, I had a grade 2 class, and I would do mindfulness with them every day. And sometimes it was because I needed it.
Yes.
And sometimes it was because the students needed it. And I found after they got used to doing it with me, they would start to ask. They would come to me and say, Mrs. K, can we just sit and breathe? And, and then because they had responded so well to it, I thought, this is really good. This is something that they're asking for, and they recognize that they need it.
Yes.
And it's so easy to do that, I just had to make sure I continued on with it, and trying to get more teachers on board with it as well.
So when you had your own classroom, what did this mindfulness practice look like?
We would get together, the kids would all sit on the carpet, we'd all sit cross-legged, and I borrowed a triangle from the music teacher.
Perfect.
So I would ding the triangle as our signal to begin, and we would all focus on the sound of the triangle and kind of listen to it disappear. And then we would just sit in quiet and breathe. And I would sort of guide them through a little bit of, the things that they could focus on, like, oh, let's see what we can hear today. What do we notice about noises in the hallway? What smells do we notice today? So I really tried to focus on the 5 senses.
Yes.
And they, at first, would only last for like 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Like they're little, they're 7 years old. They can't sit, be still and quiet for that long. And then by the end, they could go for probably close to 5 minutes with, a lot of silence, but a little bit of guidance. And, it was just a beautiful time of our day. And then I would ding the triangle again at the end, so they knew that they could, for those who chose to close their eyes, they could open their eyes, and we come back together. And they were just, it was sort of like a magical time. And it sounds strange to people who haven't done it.
Yeah.
But I think the more you if you give it a really good try and you do it every day, and it becomes just part of a regular practice and routine, you can kind of feel the energy in the room change. Yes. And even though they are little, they're still so capable of doing so much. And it was just a beautiful time of day.
I love how simple it is. Like when you explained it, all you had was a triangle, and sometimes you made them listen to certain sounds that were happening or notice certain things going on in their environment. I think a lot of teachers, they really want to start a mindfulness practice, but they're kind of afraid, right, to take that first step. I think that's always the scariest whenever you start something new.
Exactly. Yeah. The first step is always the hardest, right? And it's also about making it something that works for you and the way you teach, or the routines in your classroom. So, something else that I've tried is also just mindful watching. So we would do a mindful rainbow, looking around the room, or as we're walking down the hall to gym, find something red, then notice something orange and something yellow, and we go through all the different colors of the rainbow.
That's great.
So it doesn't, and sometimes movement, especially with little kids, and depending on the child you're working with, movement is also a good thing to bring in, because they can maintain their focus a little bit longer, or really notice what's happening with their breath and their body if they have a movement activity to go along with it. So I think maybe that could be something that's preventing or stopping from some teachers from getting started with mindfulness, is they think it just has to be, very calm and still, and, sit cross-legged and that sort of thing. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
Yeah. And the example you just gave, like, I'm thinking for kindergarten teachers, the noticing the colors, and that can easily be linked to curriculum as well, right? Because they have to learn those things. So kind of how can we bring mindfulness into bits and pieces of what we're already teaching?
Right. Yeah. And in grade 2, one of our social studies outcomes has to do with Canadian symbols. So, walking around, or maybe planting them in different parts of the room, and having a little scavenger hunt where it's just really mindful watching and which Canadian symbols can you find.
Yeah, I love that.
And something that I've done with Educalme, with the sun breathing, is doing it standing. So we would raise our arms above our heads, but then we would swan dive for our
Okay.
exhale. So just
Yeah.
adding a little bit of a deeper bend with it. And the kids really like that.
Yeah, we can add breath to any movement. We just have to be creative. And I think just for our audience, like if they're struggling with getting started, ask your students to link breath to movement. Like they can create their own. I remember last spring, I went into a classroom and the kids invented like monkey breathing and taco breathing and all these really funny kind of breathing strategies, but they're useful and they work and it's fun for them, right?
Oh yeah, and then they become way more invested if they know that you're going to use their ideas.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah, and they come up with the best things. They're so creative. I love it.
Yeah, they have so much to teach us.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So now you're not you're a resource teacher now, but now you're using Educalme Classroom. How are you using it?
Well, I'm using it daily with a grade 3 class, and I've had some other teachers come and ask me, more about mindfulness and how they can implement it in their rooms. So I've actually now partnered up with a grade 4 class, so I get to teach it twice a day. I'm really excited about that. And I'm really encouraging teachers to try some of the lessons in Educalme, the introduction, just to get a feel for some things that they could do with their own class. When I'm putting out fires, if it's one of those days, I'll when the student has, kind of is beginning to kind of return to a calm state, we'll do some 5-finger breathing. We'll just take some time together to take those deep breaths to help, regulate the body and the brain again. And I find that the different kinds of breathing strategies in Educalme Classroom have really been beneficial to helping me kind of broaden my perspective of how we can breathe, because it's not just always just a straightforward in, out, done, right? Like,
yeah, some of the little kids don't even fully understand that at that point, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So anything we can do to kind of slow their breathing and, calm them down and get them back on track really, really helps.
So you're talking about putting out fires, and I'm wondering, how do you respond to a child that's like in the red zone?
Mm-hmm.
How do you first respond to that situation? I'm curious because I think that's something I struggle with. I think a lot of teachers struggle with what's an appropriate response.
Right. Yeah. And it really depends on the child and the situation and kind of getting to know the child and what could possibly have kind of set them off. But I think one of the main things is giving the child time and space and not talking too much, because talking can actually escalate the situation.
Yes. Yeah.
So just making sure the child is safe. If we have to take a garbage can and some chairs out of the room, then, we clear the room if we have to. So just making sure the child is safe and letting them sort of work through what they need to, but also being able to read their body language. Because the child can only be in a fit of rage for so long before they begin to tire, and they kind of some will forget why they were upset in the first place. But just letting them work through it, and then sitting with them and letting them know that you're on their side, that you're there to help them, you're there to listen to them if they want to talk to about their problem, and if they don't want to talk about it, that's okay too. But just so they know that, we're there for them when they're ready to talk. And kids just need to know that there's someone in their corner. And so a lot of times, I'll just sit with them and they can talk about whatever they want. It could be what's upsetting them. It could be about their favorite TV show or their favorite YouTuber. It doesn't matter. But is what really does matter is that they know that you're there for them.
Do you find that because you're responding to the situation in this way, you're giving them a safe space? Do you find that because of that, they actually end up talking to you more about what's going on?
Yeah, I think they become more familiar with me and know that I'm not going to judge them for what they did. I'm not going to hold it against them. I'm not going to say, well, you tore up my paper yesterday. I'm not going to talk to you today. It doesn't work that way. And I find that some students, especially with the grade 3 class that I'm working with, they'll see me in the hall and they'll stop me and they'll just ask, can we do some mindfulness? It's really sweet.
I'm going to start crying.
So for some of these little guys have become like the mindfulness lady. And I don't know if it's because they're beginning to realize how they feel after we do, our 5 minutes together. And they're just craving that sense of calm and peace. But yeah, I think they begin to realize that, they always get a second chance. And for some, it's 15 and 20 chances. But, it's just understanding that no matter what they do, I'll still be there for them the next day.
That's awesome to have a safe adult like that in the school. That's amazing.
Yeah. And, sometimes the adults in the school are sadly the only safe adults.
Yes.
So, and sometimes we can forget that, not all kids have a happy home. So they really need that love and support when they're in our building. And so if we can do that for them, they deserve it.
That's amazing. How do you think that classrooms would be different in like the higher grades if we kind of started doing all these things with them from kindergarten? What do you think the older classes would look like?
Yes, definitely. My own 2 children are both in high school. And right now, like my daughter's in grade 12, and something that they're learning about in her like health and phys ed classes they're learning more about mental health, which is fantastic. I love it. Like her school has a really big focus on it, and it's one of the best things I think they've ever done. So if kids grow up with these strategies and learning how to take care of themselves at a really young age, that's something that they can carry with them their whole lives. And now, as adults, a lot of us are looking to find ways of taking care of ourselves. And, we've already hit the burnout, and now we're trying to backtrack to get into more self-care. So if we can learn how to care for ourselves at a young age and realize the importance and value of it, I think our classrooms would be completely different.
I love your answer. And also that makes me wonder what your self-care practice looks like.
Oh, it's funny. I was just listening to the podcast where Kaylee was describing her self-care practice, and she how she gets up in the morning and does her mindfulness or meditation. And it's something I tried to do first thing in the morning, but it just doesn't work for me. So
and
my
that's
mornings,
okay.
Well, yeah, and that's actually one message that I wanted to hopefully get across to people and people that I talk to in the staff room or just out and about. Do what works for you. So for me, I like to get up and go to boot camp or a spin class or I'll run on the treadmill.
Fun.
Something active, like super active. And then at the end of the day or after work is when I'll do yoga, or I'll spend a few minutes meditating or doing some mindful breathing. So my typical day is getting up probably about 5:15
Wow.
And yeah.
Oh, that's impressive.
Thanks. Yeah. And I was never ever a morning person until I began to exercise in the morning, and it completely changes my attitude. My husband has bugged me for years about being like a super grouch in the morning. And yeah, yeah, not a great claim to fame, but true. And since I started getting up early to do whatever activity it is, he's commented on how my day just starts so much better. So, I've learned that. And so, yeah, I start the day with some kind of like physical activity. And then I'm lucky that I get to walk to work. I'm exactly 1 kilometer away from my school. So
Amazing.
I get fresh air and exercise, even if it's 40 below, put my boots on, gear up and go. 'Cause that is, that's something that I find is really beneficial, getting that fresh air and sunshine and exercise. It really helps get my mind ready for what I have to do at school. And then after work, I walk home and it's the same kind of thing, like just process everything, let everything go, think about what I need to do for the evening. And then, lately I just got into yoga, which I love and wish I had found it earlier. But yeah, kind of end the day with some kind of quiet activity and practice and get to bed.
That's awesome. And you were saying that Kaylee, does all these things in the morning, but you also have an awesome morning routine.
Yeah. I'm happy that I figured out what works for me. I still have my kids to see off and that sort of thing. So I don't know if I would have been able to do it early when my kids were younger, but I also learned that I have to take care of myself first before I can really help my kids, before I can help my husband, before I can really do things for anyone else. Like they say, you have to fill your own cup. Yeah. So if that means getting up early, I'm willing to do it because I know how much better I feel after going for a run or something.
That's awesome. Yeah. And something about running, right? Like, I don't know. I love running too. And there's something about it. Like we talk about the runner's high, but it's like a real thing. I feel like it doesn't, the same feeling that you get from running or doing something, where running is involved, you don't get that feeling from anything else. But I can't quite pinpoint it. Can you?
No, you're right. Yes. Yes. And I've been running for years and it was one of those things where I started to do it when my kids were babies because I just needed to get out of the house. I needed some me time.
Yeah.
And, trying to lose the baby weight and all that kind of thing. But then I began to realize that it wasn't just the physical part of it, but it's like the emotional and like it's so hard to pinpoint, like you said. But there's just something so beneficial from running.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone will figure it out for me one day.
Yes.
But yes, maybe that's why it's awesome, because it's like this weird feeling that I can't quite put my finger on it.
Right.
So I think you've kind of explained it a little bit already, but obviously one of the biggest struggles for teachers is to find that work-life balance. So how do you find balance? You kind of touched it on it already, but
I think that that is one of the biggest struggles we have as teachers, is that we are sort of, most of us, we're givers, right? Mm-hmm. And we want to give 100% to each of our students and to our colleagues, and make sure that we're addressing all the parents' concerns. And so we just give until we can't give anymore. And one of the best things that I think a teacher can do is to make sure that they're taking time for themselves. And so whether it's running or yoga or just going to the staff room for a few laughs, just do something little every day for yourself. And little, like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. but just finding what works for you, and what works one day may not be the same the next, but just making sure that you're doing something every day to find that balance. Like, it's just so important to help, prevent burnout, and to help students. Like, I went to a PD session a few weeks ago, and the presenter talked about a dysregulated teacher can't help regulate a dysregulated student.
That's right.
So, it's so important that we kind of maintain our own balance so that we can really help the people around us.
Yes.
And to not feel guilty about it.
Yes, and it goes back to what you said, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. Yeah. And I think the demands of teachers are changing, or they have changed. And the kids that we're getting in our classrooms right now are not the same kind of kids that we had a few years ago. So it's really becoming more and more important that we take care of ourselves.
Is that something, how many years have you been teaching? Can I ask?
Yeah. This is my 19th year.
Okay. So do you find that you do see a big difference from the kids you would have had at the beginning of your career versus now?
Oh, a completely different dynamic. I started teaching in a part of the city where it was, a lot of, middle class type of families.
Yeah.
And, the biggest challenge I had my first few years of teaching was a child with ADHD. And, he had a full-time VA. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. And now, where I'm working, we've seen a huge shift just in the last 3 years. We have 62% of our population is EAL.
Okay.
And so that has really changed. And, 3 years ago, I think we were about 10%. So
wow.
Dramatic shift in a short amount of time. And we also have a community that is growing, and it's at a really, really fast pace. So our population has increased. So not only do we have greater needs, we have more kids, and we're squished. Our grade 4 classes have 31 kids in them right now.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of adds a whole lot of layers to an already complex job.
Yeah, that is crazy. 31 grade 4 students. Like, kudos to that teacher, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, so the job is changing, and I think it will continue to change as, as our kids come in, because they're coming in with more complexities and diverse needs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So from where you are today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
I always have to ask that one.
Right. Yeah. I guess it would sort of be, don't wish your life away. Enjoy every moment. Like, enjoy all the little things, because wishing that you were someone else or somewhere different, or thinking about what could be or could have been, you're not living in the moment. And so, have a dream and chase it, and do whatever you can to make that dream a reality, but also enjoy where you are right now.
I love that. That is amazing. Amazing advice.
Oh, thanks. I wish I had followed it when I was younger, though.
Yeah, well, it's a process to learn to follow that type of advice, and it's something that I'm working on constantly, and sometimes I feel like I'm there, sometimes I feel like I'm not near there.
Yeah, right. But it's always like it is a huge journey. Like, that's life, right? Like, we have we have our path that we think we're on, and then something happens and we kind of veer in one direction and then we go another way. And, but it's just all about staying with your own goals, your own dreams, and, doing what you can to make them come true, and enjoying all the ups and downs as much as you can. And learning and growing from them, right? Like, not everything in life is going to be all happy and rosy, but just understanding that everything happens for a reason, and you just learn from it and become stronger from all the downs.
I love that. So where can our audience find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at teacher Jen K204. If people had any questions, they wanted to email me, they're welcome to email or direct message. My email is jkreitz@pembinatrails.ca. If anyone wants to reach out, I'd be happy to talk.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
What an awesome episode, Jen. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your expertise with us and with our listeners. So awesome. I loved the idea of looking for colors while you're walking in the hallway. I think I'm going to try that out with my grade 5s and see if that helps them to be a little bit more quiet and stealthy as we walk through the hallways. What a great takeaway. All right. So if after listening to that episode, you're thinking, okay, I really want to get onto the Educalme classroom train, I'm ready to start this in my classroom, well, then join us on April 25th, where you can have a half day to learn with us in person how to start a mindfulness practice in your classroom, and specifically how to use Educalme Classroom as your resource, your awesome, ready-to-use bilingual program that gives you one lesson for every single day for the entire school year, so that you'll never be left hanging going, what am I going to do for mindfulness today? We have got you covered. You've got a lot of stuff on your plate. You don't need to be creating more work. So we've taken all that work off of your plate and we're handing it to you on our Educalme Classroom silver platter. That's what we're here for, to support you with mindfulness in the classroom. So if you want to join us for that professional development workshop, go to educalme.com/Educalme Classroom PD. So again, that's Educalme spelled EduCalme.com/Educalme Classroom PD. Now we're offering this session in the morning in English and in the afternoon in French, so you can choose your language, but no matter which language you do the professional development workshop in, you will have access to Educalme Classroom in both languages. All right, so what are we up to this week at Educalme? We're taking a little bit easier because it is report card week for me, so I'm really focusing on getting those done. And Josiane's report cards are due a little bit later than mine, so it kind of worked out perfect that they weren't both due in the same week. So she's kind of taking over the day-to-day Educalme duties for the week while I focus on report cards, and then we'll switch that over when she's in report card week. So nice to have a partner that we can support each other during our a little bit more difficult times. And as always, we want to remind you that you are awesome. We appreciate you, and keep up the great work. Now, if there's something that you appreciated about this episode today, don't keep it all to yourself. Share it with a friend so that we can spread the calm, balance, and joy that educators are looking for. Wishing you a wonderful week. Hey there, Balanced Educator. We appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world. We are here to support you, so we've created a free resource library for you to use anytime you want. resources for mindfulness for you and your kiddos at home or in the classroom. You can get these free resources by going to www.educalme.com/The Balanced Educator. Again, that's www.educalme, that's spelled educalme.com/The Balanced Educator. Thank you for being a part of our Educalme community.